Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live session. Let's just put up the risk warning before we get started properly. So, the major announcement today, it's really in 15 minutes. It's the latest interest rate decision from the European Central Bank. As usual, no changes are expected. We'll have a look at the euro at quarter to one. But most of the excitement for the European Central Bank tends to come, if there is going to be any, the press conference that they have at 1:30, so 45 minutes after the announcement. And there's a feeling that because European economies have slowed, we've seen the Italian economy go into recession, the German economy narrowly missed it with 0% growth last time round. There's a feeling that in the press conference, they will revise forecasts for the economy and inflation, and may push back even further any plan they've got to start raising rates. So we could see a bit of euro volatility this afternoon. We might see a bit at 12:45 when the announcement happens, but I think it's the press conference from 1:30 that could be the interesting one. So we'll see. But I think overall, it could end up being a quiet day apart from that, because of course we've got the payrolls due out tomorrow, the US job numbers. So let's get into it. I think what's interesting, let's start with stock markets today for a change. I think what's interesting, let's just bring this up. We're seeing quite weak performance for US markets yesterday, and it's really off the back of that sort of somewhat crazy move we had Sunday night to Sunday night in the out of hours market, and then during Monday during the actual sort of real in hours trading. So we saw this is the S&P we're looking at. We'll look at the Dow in a minute. So the market went to 2820 on Sunday night, which was new highs for the year. So continuing that recovery from Christmas, but then really reversed it sharply and slipped back to the lows from the previous week during actual trading. And we did get a bounce back. We had a really quiet day overall on Tuesday, but yesterday it slipped again, a fairly quiet day, but in the overnight market has slipped below Monday's low. So quite nervy. I think we're seeing quite nervous stock markets. We'll see how this afternoon goes. Like I say, maybe not expecting too much this afternoon because we do have US unemployment numbers tomorrow. But after a really bullish start on Sunday night, we've seen markets sort of a little bit jittery, I think, this week. But just to go back to our daily view, the big picture view, I think this is the one that's important for stock markets at the moment. We have these old highs on the S&P, about 28, 25, that sort of area from October, November, December last year. Market sells off, bounce back. So again, if we're going to run out of steam anywhere, if there are going to be nerves, this was always going to be as good a place as any. So to watch going into this afternoon, I think maybe, okay, it's slipped lower in the overnight market. So maybe some levels to watch this afternoon. The lows from early London trading around about 2760, that sort of level. So maybe we'll see something of a recovery as this afternoon goes on, a gentle recovery. I mean, looking pretty on the hourly charts, looking pretty oversold on the RSI. It went oversold sort of 5-6 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Didn't really do much and has pushed a bit lower again overnight. The MACD also hooking over for fans of these indicators. MACD also hooking over and giving a buy signal. So yeah, a bit nervous this week, these markets. So let's see what this afternoon brings. Let's take a look at the Dow Jones. Let's bring that one up. I'm expecting similar sort of moves. Yeah, so again, we had that massive, so on Sunday night, it almost got to 26,200. But by 6 o'clock on Monday, UK time, it was down around about 25,600. So we saw a 600-point turnaround during the first half of trading on Monday, a quieter day on Tuesday, and then just a bit drifty yesterday. And again, the Dow has slipped below the lows set on Monday. So again, going into this afternoon, I think the out of hours low is one to watch, 25.50. But again, a market that is a little bit nervous. And the levels we've been watching on the Dow on the upside around about 26,300. That was the hurdle from November, the highs from November, and just above 26,000 in December. And again, in the last week or so, we've pushed above that 26,000 mark. So again, if markets are going to get nervous anywhere, then this is where we are. And a quick look at the DAX before we have a look at some of the other markets. Let's have a look. So there's our DAX. So this is the German index. So this is the daily chart. So again, has gone overbought the 1st of March. Hasn't made much progress since then. And like these US markets, it's been slipping back a little bit this week. The MACD looks like it could be about to give a sell signal on the MACD. The big levels for the DAX really going back. So again, it's all about, I think, the November highs for these markets. So it's around about 11.7 was the high in November for the DAX. So again, I think that's the hurdle to watch. If we flip it over to an hourly, there we go. So I mean, again, if you're going to have an aggressive trade on the DAX, an aggressive trade could be a low. We had the lows on March the 4th, so a couple of days ago, around about 11,520. We've not seen much volatility so far today. It's been stuck in a bit of a sort of a 40-50 point range today, maybe treading water ahead of this ECB announcement plus the payrolls tomorrow. But 11,500, 11,520 maybe support going into this afternoon. But I think it all depends on how these US markets perform. It's always a bit of an odd week when the payrolls are coming out, because once you get sort of Wednesday of the week, arguably things do start, volatility does start to dry up as people are hanging on to see what the US job number is going to be like. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at the euro. Not much change over the last couple of days. So still, I think yesterday, I think it was about 113.08 yesterday when we were looking at it. Where was it yesterday? 12. Here we go. So we were here yesterday. So it moved. So it moved about 25 points higher, and it's come back to it. So again, really flat for euro US dollar. What time is it now? We've got about 8 minutes until the interest rate announcement happens. But again, for those of you who are joining a bit late today, I think 12:35 is the press conference where we'll have any excitement. If there is going to be any excitement today, it'll be once the press conference starts. So again, for the euro, the big picture view, it's been a really dull few months. Any weakness much below 113 brings out the buyers. So arguably, if you had a bullish view on the euro against the dollar, buying sort of this sort of area with a stop the other side of the November lows is an interesting proposition if we think that 112 is going to hold. But we just have a massive lack of volatility in the euro. Let's see. I mean, maybe they say something really dramatic in the press conference this afternoon. Maybe that does finally spark a bit of life into it. But we'll catch up. We'll do it when we have a look tomorrow. We'll see how the euro reacted. Then, of course, we have the pound, very much still being driven by Brexit, or the lack of progress on Brexit, maybe we should say. And I was saying earlier this week, I mean, we did have a bit of a more positive day yesterday, but the pound has been losing ground so far this month. All right, we're only a week into the month, but it's drifted from some sort of 133.50 at the end of February against the dollar. It's lost 230, 240 points since then. Excuse me. It is interesting down here because on the way up, the 130 area, if we flip that over to a shorter term chart, here we go. So this whole sort of 129.70 to 130 was support. It did try to recover yesterday afternoon. We did see a push up to 131.80, and you can just see on the hourly chart for most of today's session, it's just nosedived. But again, I don't think I'd trade it today because of the payrolls tomorrow. But there's an obvious reference point: the lows from Tuesday at 131. I think if it broke much below that, then the risk is we're going to pull deeper back into the 130s, which is when it gets interesting, I think, because it was such good support the third week of Feb. So just a bit dull over the last couple of days. Just to mention, of course, we launched this new market this week, which I think is a really useful one, the dollar index. So if you're a client, if you put DXY, that's the short code for it. If you put DXY into the search, that's the dollar index, and it's the dollar against a basket of major world currencies, and it hasn't managed to push above sort of what 97.80 since November. It's currently trading at 96.87. But it has been strong. We have seen something of a US dollar comeback over the last week or so, and this is putting pressure on the pound and the euro. But I think the dollar index is always an interesting one to watch, just to have a global view of what the dollar's looking like. We had that great recovery into the summer of last year, a little bit sideways since then, but there does appear to be still, when we see any major sell-offs for the dollar, we do see buyers coming back out. I think where it gets interesting is if it does break above these old highs. We're still a way away from it, but let's see. We'll keep sort of popping back to the US dollar index. And there's a question coming in about silver. We'll have a look at silver in a minute, but let's take a look at gold and oil. I think we did get a move in oil yesterday. Let's just bring up the oil price and take a look at that. So again, on a Wednesday, we do have the oil inventories. So here we go. So we had there's let me just zoom that in. They come out at 3:30. So we did have quite a bit of volatility on that hour for oil. So the oil price traded as high as 56.25, as low as 55.67. So we saw nearly a 60-cent move for oil. But what was interesting, I think it was the level we were flagging up from the 1st of March, the lows 55.70. So it spiked through that low by a few points. But again, we have seen a recovery. And I still think that does appear to be the theme for oil at the moment. Any sort of significant sell-offs of $1, $1.50 during the day do look like buying opportunities. But I think if we look at the longer term chart, there's still the argument that we've lost a lot of momentum since that bounce back from December. So 58 to 60, I think on the daily charts, still a big problem. Short term, I think there are opportunities if you're nimble and you want to sit there and watch it. Any sort of dips below 56 seems to be a buying opportunity, but it's having problems from 57.5 through to 58. So a bit duller than we've been used to in recent weeks for the oil price. And finally, gold. Before we get into the questions, we'll have a look at that silver chart in a minute. Gold. So gold, not much progress here. It really does feel like we are treading water, really. So for gold, for me, it's the recovery, the bigger recovery is still going from August last year. The market has dropped about $60 or so since those highs in the 3rd week of Feb, and 12.75 is the big support. And you can see here's our daily candles the last 3 days. Very tight range for the last few days, nothing major going on, but 12.75 the big level. And I just don't think there's going to be any excitement this afternoon. I think we have to get these payrolls, the US jobs report out of the way tomorrow, and maybe things get a bit more interesting. So someone's asked about silver. Let's have a look at silver. We have had a look at this now and again over the last few weeks or so. And I think the interesting thing with silver, if we go, I think remember we have to go all the way back. Arguably, the downtrend that started in April 2011 is arguably still in place. You could, particularly if you took it off these 2016 highs, let's just pick up on that. It has recovered as gold has recovered, and it's had a couple of goes actually of pushing through here, but so far it's sold off, and it has broken below the January low. So at the moment, silver is on new lows for the year. So it's definitely a weaker performer than gold. The fact it's on new lows for the year, does demonstrate it's weak. For me, if it comes under a bit more pressure, maybe what might be interesting if we slip below $15. We saw plenty of support on the way up from 14 through to 14.50. So I think there's maybe a chance of another squeeze by silver back up towards 16 to have a look at that old trend line, have a look at those old highs, But at the moment, it's definitely still weak. We're still drifting. So at the moment, I wouldn't be in a hurry to do anything. But let's keep coming back to it and see. I think there's maybe a half decent chance we will see some strength come in if it slips below $15. But at the moment, with it making new lows for the year today, it's a market that's still weak. So that's it really. So the markets to watch. The euro and that interest rate decision is now. So let's just see. We're no surprises expected, but let's see if we're seeing. Oh, we are seeing a bit of volatility for the euro. Here we go. Let's bring this up. So it's dropped about 15 points, which at the moment it's a pretty big move for the euro. There's the move you can see. So the interest rate decision has just come out. I'm guessing no changes as expected, but watch the press conference at 12:30. So I mean, I think what's going to be interesting going into this press conference. There we go. If we flip this over to an hourly, so we're now trading at 12.78. The lows, what are the lows for the year? The lows for the year is this level here, about 12.30, 112.30 for the euro. So about 40, 50 points below where we are now. Are we going to see these lows hold? What gets really interesting is if the euro does break below those 2018 lows at 112 near enough. But I'd be tempted to watch for some strength coming back in, and it's coming back in now, and maybe treating this as an overreaction. So I think it's probably the more interesting market in what's expected to be a fairly quiet afternoon. I think the euro against the dollar is maybe the more interesting market to watch because we've just had that interest rate announcement, and we do have the press conference at 12:30. But I think everything else is just a little bit treading water until we get the unemployment data out tomorrow. So we'll come back to the euro and see how it fared. We'll start wrapping things up there, but don't forget we're doing the payrolls webinar tomorrow. That starts at 1:15. So we'll do a little bit of a look at what the market is expecting. I think it's about 180,000 jobs to have been added, but we'll have a look at that tomorrow. We'll have a look at the markets, and then we'll watch the markets when the announcement comes out at 1:30 to see how they react. If I can get my words out. But that's tomorrow. So we'll have a look at that then from 1:15. As usual, to open an account, go to our website. You have access to all the charts, all the markets we've looked at today, and that's Capital.com. Any questions, drop me an email, david.jones@capital.com. And if you're watching the recorded version of the live thing we did, just leave us a message in the comments down below, and I do check back to see if there's any questions. But for today, we'll wrap things up there. Let's have one last quick look at the euro. There it is at 112.80, and we'll come back at 1:15 and see how these markets are ahead of the latest US unemployment release. Okay, so hopefully see you tomorrow.